There is a unique kind of magic that belongs exclusively to the fading light of a cinema classic, a specific warmth that standard high-definition screens can never quite replicate. To look back at Hollywood during the twilight of the 20th century, through the vibrant decades of the 1970s, 80s and 90s, is to enter a realm where glamour felt entirely organic and elegance was carried with a quiet, effortless sophistication. It was an era defined by a dazzling constellation of actresses who did not merely play roles. They captured the collective imagination of a global audience, embedding their faces into the very fabric of our most cherished memories. They were the architects of romance, the fierce protectors of cinematic vulnerability, and the symbols of a timeless femininity that felt both completely ethereal and deeply human. When we think of that golden age, we remember the soft, approachable beauty that illuminated our television screens on quiet evenings, and the fierce, groundbreaking strength that redefined what a heroine could be on the silver screen. We remember the trailblazing icons who shattered historical barriers on luxury magazine covers, establishing new standards of radiant confidence, and the enigmatic sirens who brought an intoxicating mix of intelligence and sensuality to unforgettable cultural phenomena. These women carried a commanding elegance that could hold an entire theatre breathless, yet they possessed an underlying warmth that made millions of strangers feel an instant, deeply personal connection. Their smiles were comforting, their eyes held unspoken depths, and their presence filled the frame with an undeniable, intoxicating mystique. Yet, behind the brilliant facade of studio lights, roaring applause, and red carpets, a much quieter, sometimes painful reality was unfolding. The very industry that celebrated their natural grace often demanded an impossible perfection, hiding the behind-the-scenes intrigues, the sudden shifts of fortune, and the private battles that remained strictly behind closed doors. For some, the overwhelming intensity of fame would eventually prompt a graceful retreat into a life of profound privacy and reflection, far removed from the relentless glare of the paparazzi. For others, the journey would be marked by immense resilience, public heartbreak, or a courageous confrontation with the fragile nature of life itself. The passage of decades has inevitably changed the landscape they once ruled, and time has rewritten many of their stories in ways the public could never have anticipated. But as the velvet curtains draw back once more, we begin to uncover what truly happened when the spotlights dimmed, revealing the hidden drama, the enduring legacy, and the bittersweet truths of Hollywood's most unforgettable idols. To step onto the sound stages of Hollywood during its most vibrant decades was to enter a high-stakes arena where a single breakthrough could alter the course of a life overnight. The journey to the top always began with a spark of raw, undeniable promise, an intangible quality that studio executives and casting directors spent lifetimes trying to discover. In the 1970s, that promise manifested as a refreshing wave of natural femininity and intellectual sophistication, breaking away from the rigid studio systems of the past. Audiences were captivated by a new breed of television beauty, one that combined sharp intelligence with a quiet, comforting grace, proving that women could lead major primetime phenomena while maintaining an understated, dignified presence. At the exact same time, the fashion world was experiencing its own seismic shift, as groundbreaking icons stepped onto the covers of elite magazines, shattering long-standing racial barriers with radiant confidence and timeless glamour. These historic milestones did more than just sell copies. They reshaped the cultural landscape, proving that true elegance belonged to a much broader canvas than society had previously allowed. This was the intoxicating dawn of their golden years, a golden era where the initial taste of fame felt like an endless summer, filled with the promise of creative freedom and international adoration, as the calendar turned toward the neon-drenched, high-energy landscape of the 1980s. The definition of Hollywood's stardom underwent a radical, fascinating evolution. The gentle warmth of the previous decade suddenly found itself sharing space with a fierce, unprecedented kind of feminine strength. On the silver screen, heroines emerged who were completely detached from the traditional damsel-in-distress tropes, redefining action cinema through an unmatched combination of intense physical dedication and raw, emotional vulnerability. Audiences watched in awe, as actresses transformed their bodies and minds to portray warriors fighting for survival, setting a brand new standard for what a female lead could accomplish in a blockbuster landscape dominated by men. Concurrently, the era embraced a sense of graceful mystery and unexpected sensuality, encapsulated by unforgettable cultural phenomena that blended music, dance, and effortless confidence into a heady cinematic mix. This was a time when a single soulful look from an actress in a romantic drama could create an atmosphere of profound intimacy, drawing viewers into stories that felt deeply sincere and intimately personal. The industry was booming, the box office returns were staggering, and to the outside world, these reigning queens of the screen seemed entirely invincible, floating on a cloud of luxury, praise, and endless opportunity. By the time the 1990s arrived, the spotlight had grown even brighter, casting a brilliant glow over a new generation of talent, while continuing to illuminate the established legends. Television culture reached an absolute zenith with the explosion of primetime dramas that captured the innocence, romance, and rebellious fire of youth. The world became obsessed with the sun-drenched aesthetics of California living, where soft, approachable beauties and fiercely independent, rebellious spirits coexisted on screen, creating an irresistible narrative friction. These women became the definitive faces of alternative beauty, blending a deep sense of mystery, intellectual depth, and emotional complexity into an unforgettable identity that resonated with a generation looking for authenticity. Whether it was the effortless girl-next-door charm that shaped pop culture trends globally, or the ethereal, otherworldly presence that made cinematic fantasies feel real, the period was defined by an extraordinary diversity of talent. They were celebrated as the eternal beloveds of international cinema, moving effortlessly between prestigious European art houses and massive Hollywood thrillers, commanding attention wherever they walked. Yet, behind this magnificent tapestry of success, the first subtle cracks in the golden facade were beginning to show, hidden carefully away from the prying eyes of the public and the relentless lenses of the paparazzi. The path to fame, while undeniably glamorous, carried an exorbitant hidden price tag that every actress was eventually forced to pay. Behind the scenes, the grueling production schedules of television networks and major film studios demanded absolute obedience, often pushing these women to the absolute brink of physical and emotional exhaustion. A single iconic role, while cementing a legacy, could easily become a beautiful cage, trapping an actress in a cycle of intense typecasting where executives refused to see past a specific image or character archetype. The industry, for all its celebratory rhetoric regarding natural grace, remained deeply obsessed with an unrealistic, ever-shifting standard of youth and perfection. Behind closed doors, intense studio intrigues and executive pressures created an environment where actresses were frequently pitted against one another, their worth measured strictly by weekend box office returns or network ratings. As these initial difficulties began to mount, the tension between public expectation and private reality grew increasingly strained. The very qualities that made these women so beloved on screen, their deep empathy, their emotional honesty, and their willingness to expose their vulnerability, made the harsh transactional nature of Hollywood uniquely difficult to navigate. Some found themselves fighting quiet battles against an industry that sought to commodify their personal lives, turning their romances, heartbreaks, and personal struggles into public entertainment. Others began to realize that the studio system, which had lifted them to such dizzying heights, was entirely conditional, ready to look the other way the moment an actress demanded creative control, challenged a contract, or simply chose to age naturally. The glittering facade remained intact for the cameras, but beneath the surface, the seeds of a dramatic turning point had already been planted, setting the stage for a series of behind-the-scenes crises, hidden heartbreaks, and societal silences that would alter the trajectories of these cinematic legends forever. The inevitable moment when the beautiful illusion could no longer be sustained arrived with a quiet, devastating certainty as the 20th century began to draw to a close. For years, the unspoken contract between Hollywood and its most celebrated actresses demanded an absolute adherence to perfection. An unwritten rule that private pain must always be buried beneath layers of studio-approved smiles and impeccable glamour. However, Behind the closed doors of sprawling estates and isolated dressing rooms, the immense weight of keeping up this flawless facade began to severely fracture the lives of these screen idols. The entertainment landscape itself was undergoing a dark, predatory transformation, moving away from the reverent, controlled publicity of the classic studio era and into an age of relentless tabloid sensationalism. The public appetite shifted from admiring the art to hungrily demanding a glimpse of the vulnerability, treating the deeply personal crises, heartbreaks, and physical vulnerabilities of these women not with empathy, but as highly profitable public entertainment. This profound shift in the cultural atmosphere exposed the brutal truth of an industry that was entirely unprepared, and often entirely unwilling, to support its icons when the realities of human fragility intervened. Actresses who had once embodied the very pinnacle of youthful charm, sharp wit, and adventurous glamour suddenly found themselves locked in terrifying internal battles that no screenplay could have ever prepared them for. The sudden, unpredictable onset of severe, debilitating neurological conditions, from the exhausting realities of multiple sclerosis to prolonged, exhausting struggles with Parkinson's disease, ruthlessly stripped away the effortless physical control that had defined their historic on-screen movements. For a long time, powerful network executives and major film studios operated under a cold, calculated policy of total silence, deliberately concealing these diagnoses from the public out of a fear that a compromised star would immediately destroy the financial viability of a multi-million-dollar project. When the physical truths could no longer be hidden behind clever camera angles or long absences, the industry reacted not with structural support, but with a gradual, isolating withdrawal, leaving these once ubiquitous women to navigate their altered physical realities entirely in the shadows, far removed from the aggressive glare of the cameras. Even more heartbreaking was the reality faced by those fierce, rebellious spirits and beloved cinematic muses who were forced to confront their own mortality while remaining trapped under the unyielding lens of public scrutiny. The emotional fire and indomitable courage that had once redefined primetime television and dark suspense cinema were called upon to wage raw, agonizing battles against advanced terminal illnesses like breast cancer. Rather than retreating into total secrecy, some of these extraordinary women made the fearless decision to dismantle the pristine, artificial standards of Hollywood entirely, choosing instead to allow the world to witness the unvarnished, painful truth of their medical journeys. Yet, this radical honesty stood in stark contrast to the historical behavior of the entertainment industry, which had spent decades enforcing a strict silence around illness and aging, preferring the marketable fiction of eternal youth over the complex, fragile truth of the individuals themselves. When these legendary figures ultimately passed away, the profound shockwaves that reverberated through generations of fans served as a stark, melancholy reminder of the immense disconnect between the permanent, frozen magic of celluloid and the fleeting, deeply fragile nature of human life. Beyond the visible physical ailments lay the equally profound, deeply guarded crises of mental health and emotional trauma that quietly plagued the behind-the-scenes world of these cinema legends. The psychological toll of relentless typecasting, intense artistic exploitation, and the constant, suffocating surveillance of the paparazzi pushed several uniquely sensitive and eccentric geniuses to their absolute limits. On certain legendary film sets of the late 20th century, the boundary between intense artistic dedication and genuine psychological duress was intentionally and callously blurred by demanding directors who viewed an actress's emotional undoing as a mere tool for cinematic realism. When these deep emotional fractures inevitably spilled over into the public consciousness through highly publicized personal trials, abrupt career exiles, or periods of intense emotional instability, the Hollywood establishment was swift and merciless in its judgment. Rather than acknowledging the systemic pressures, the exhausting schedules, and the profound lack of protection that drove these brilliant minds to the brink, society and the studios chose to rewrite their narratives as simple cautionary tales of personal failure, ensuring an institutional silence that effectively banished these forgotten idols into deep, self-imposed isolation. The ultimate betrayal of this golden era, however, lay in the absolute commodification of identity. where certain sunlit fantasies and glamorous blonde icons found their private lives completely stolen, packaged, and broadcast to a voracious global audience without their consent. The industry that had grown immensely wealthy off their natural sensuality and effortless confidence offered zero protection when their true privacy was violated, revealing a systemic disregard for the actual women behind the globally recognized symbols. This turning point forced a profound paradigm-shifting realization among many of the reigning queens of the 80s and 90s. They came to understand that survival in this unforgiving environment required a total, uncompromising rejection of the very standards that had made them famous. The dramatic climax of their stories was not a loud public scandal, but a quiet, revolutionary reclamation of personal autonomy. It was the deliberate decision to stop performing for an insatiable public, to shed the suffocating, artificial layers of Hollywood expectation, and to step out into the world completely naturally, precisely as they were, proving that their true strength was found not in the perfection of the image, but in the fierce, unyielding resilience of their authentic selves. The passage of time has a unique way of filtering out the noise of transient fame, leaving behind only that which is genuinely enduring and profoundly meaningful. As the high-gloss intensity of the late 20th century gradually shifted into the horizon, the extraordinary women who had defined the cinematic landscape began to write their most deeply personal chapters. For many, the ultimate victory over an unforgiving industry was the deliberate choice to step away from the relentless demands of the spotlight, trading the chaotic energy of studio backlots for the quiet restoration of private life. This transition was not a retreat born of defeat, but an act of supreme autonomy, a graceful migration toward a lifestyle focused on family, personal healing, and the cultivation of long-neglected creative passions. In the tranquil spaces of rural living, private business ventures, and close-knit family circles, these icons found a sense of peace and grounded authenticity that the artificial glamour of Hollywood could never provide, proving that their worth was never truly dependent on the fickle validation of box office numbers or network renewals. Behind the public identities of these screen legends lay a wealth of little-known biographical depth and multifaceted artistry that the public rarely had the opportunity to fully appreciate. Away from the characters that made them household names, these women evolved into teachers, dedicated textile artists, accomplished photographers, and insightful poets, channeling their immense creative energies into mediums where they held absolute control over their own narratives. Others utilized their enduring global influence to become powerful catalysts for change, establishing major humanitarian initiatives, advocating tirelessly for mental health awareness, and championing civil rights, education, and animal protection around the world. By openly sharing their personal triumphs and vulnerabilities, particularly regarding long-term health challenges and the emotional complexities of aging naturally, they dismantled the unyielding, youthful stereotypes of the entertainment industry. They transformed the conversation surrounding maturity, demonstrating to generations of fans that true elegance is a dynamic, evolving force rooted in resilience, intelligence, and an unwavering commitment to societal well-being. The legacy of this remarkable era is also profoundly shaped by the memory of those irreplaceable spirits who have passed away, leaving an indelible mark on the history of popular culture. These forgotten idols and beloved muses, who once brought an unforgettable mix of fragile innocence, eccentric beauty, spirited charm, and rebellious fire to the screen, remain deeply woven into the collective consciousness of cinema enthusiasts worldwide. Their final years were often defined by a quiet dignity and a courageous public spirit that inspired millions as they faced terminal illnesses and severe physical adversities with an unvarnished, breathtaking honesty. The enduring cult status of their films and television triumphs stands as a permanent monument to their vibrant energy and unmistakable screen charisma. Though they are no longer with us, the warmth and emotional intensity they breathed into their historic performances continue to resonate, ensuring that their names will forever be spoken with a deep sense of reverence, nostalgia, and affectionate admiration. Simultaneously, many of the reigning queens of the 80s and 90s continue to actively navigate the modern entertainment industry, seamlessly balancing high-profile creative independence with a freer, more self-possessed public lifestyle. Whether they are commanding global fashion stages as timeless icons, producing acclaimed, women-centered stories across major television platforms, or embracing a completely natural, makeup-free approach to public life. These women are actively rewriting the rules of longevity in Hollywood. They move effortlessly between prestigious international film projects and deeply personal artistic collaborations, commanding immense respect from both contemporary filmmakers and devoted, multi-generational audiences. Their current presence carries a rare blend of sophisticated charm and emotional maturity, a testament to a lifetime spent mastering their craft while fiercely protecting their personal authenticity, far removed from conventional, institutional expectations. Ultimately, the profound mark these legendary actresses have left on history cannot be measured simply by the awards they achieved or the iconic roles they brought to life. Their true impact resides in the unforgettable emotions they evoked, the cultural boundaries they courageously expanded, and the sense of nostalgic magic that still effortlessly envelops their names whenever they are remembered. They represented an era of filmmaking where natural femininity, fierce vulnerability, and intellectual sophistication were allowed to converge into something truly transcendent. Decades after they first captured our hearts, their enduring grace, polished sophistication, and profound human warmth remain entirely impossible to forget, serving as a timeless reminder of why we fell in love with the magic of the silver screen in the first place. Breaking Hollywood 2026 Golden Star Memory Special Investigation. The reclamation of the Idleslave ticker, Hollywood. See, new analysis reveals the systemic crush of the studio archetype on 70s, 90s icons, the survivors, Kate Jackson. Beverly Johnson and Linda Hamilton lead a quiet autonomy revolution toward natural aging and privacy, honoring the fearless. Shannon Doherty and Shelley Duvall's unvarnished legacies spark continuous calls for structural entertainment reforms. 2026 Outlook. Reigning queens Nicole Kidman and Pamela Anderson rewrite the rules of longevity far removed from traditional Hollywood pressure. The real price of perfection era. The facade hidden truth. The 2026 reclamation. 1970s organic glamour and natural femininity grew. Ealing schedules. Commercial exploitation. Quiet retreats. Rural living. Selective artistry. 1980s. Fierce physical and emotional vulnerability. Extreme typecasting. Corporate isolation. Mental health advocacy. Structural defiance. 1990s. Rebellious alternative and universal. Aesthetics. Tabloid predation. Stolen privacy. Total creative control. Unvarnished raw honesty. Exportiro tablizzi for deeper insights, historical breakdowns, and full structural reflections. Ensure you explore our complete video essay collection on Golden Star Memories.